You know what? Since we're going to end with the stuff about the digestive, we can move into digestive and nausea from that.
Okay, good.
I assure you, you will be happy with our result.
Let's go, Natasha. Come on. You can rest on your laurels because you nailed the 8. Okay.
I'm ready. Watch this.
Okay, you guys ready?
The cheat. Remember.
I knew.
Okay, action.
Let's talk about aging and wellness in dogs and how the Pet Med Lab's CBD treats and other products can really help with those conditions. So when we're talking about aging in dogs, what kind of things can occur within a dog's body as it gets older that maybe are conditions we'd like to treat?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the most common things that we see are related to mobility. So really the skeletal system, and then internally, a lot of the times that we start seeing just problems with normal brain function, normal senility. Sometimes a family will come to me and say they're just not acting right. They're not acting normally. So that combined with not being able to get in and out of the car, or maybe not being able to fully make it to the end of the normal walk, those are the common symptoms that we'll see that then trigger us to kind of think about, okay, what else can we add? How about we add a little bit of these, the senior canine CBD treats?
Mm-hmm. Right. So you mentioned the brain function, and that's something that, I mean, I would not even know where to start when I think that my dog is acting a little differently. But one of the great things that we know about CBD, especially the high quality CBD we have in the Pet Med Labs treats, is that we have one CBD, is it called a transmitter, the CBD
The receptor.
receptor. I feel like I'm in a science class. I love it. So we have the CB1 and the CB2.
Yes.
And the CB1, the receptor, specifically works with your brain and your nervous system. So when you're talking about a dog thinking and feeling like itself, what an excellent way to really narrow in on something that could help with those functions. And of course, you mentioned the mobility as well, which is an absolute sign of aging in all dogs. What about other things that maybe we can't see or we can't tell by looking at a dog? Any other things that could happen within it that maybe are more invisible to the eye?
Yeah, there are a lot of disorders that we don't really see signs of until they're quite advanced. A lot of them surrounding kidneys and livers. Those are two of the most important organs within a dog system, particularly, that end up kind of being the organs of least resistance. The ones that kind of give out towards the end of life.
Right.
So when we're able to give supplements that maybe mitigate the disease progression, or mitigate just even the regular degradation progression, that's where those Pet Med Labs senior canine CBD treats do come into handy.
And you mentioned that we have things we can't see, things we can see. Yeah. I know that there are some things within especially aging dogs that I just say, well, that's what happens, dogs get older. And I don't necessarily look at it and think that it's something that maybe a treat, or that, being able to pay more attention to my dog's diet and what I'm giving it could help. But something like that I'm thinking is the periodontal disease, how the teeth just kind of start to look a little older, or maybe their eyes, or dogs developing glaucoma. Are those the type of things that a better diet, or these Pet Med Lab senior treats could help?
Yeah, absolutely. And even something as simple as CBD treats supporting the cardiovascular system. That can help maintain a healthy mouth for longer. That can help maintain healthier circulation throughout the eyes, which then will hopefully, again, mitigate the progression of nuclear sclerosis or glaucoma, which are very common in older pets.
It sounds like it's just really giving your pet the best chance at living a good old age. You know what? Because they're going to get old. I mean, it beats the alternative, which I love to say. But if that's going to happen, how can you make that as comfortable and as happy and as healthy as possible? And these senior treats really seem to be an excellent choice for the aging and wellness category of conditions we find in dogs.
Yep, you're absolutely right.
There's one more thing I know that happens with dogs, especially as they get older, and that's that sometimes their digestive system isn't working quite up to par. Maybe they're not as hungry, and then once they eat, maybe they're not digesting as much, or they maybe can't even pass as well. So what's happening there as dogs age, and is that something that's common?
Yeah, absolutely. The digestive tract can change. Just like the rest of our body can age, so can the gut. So even giving a supplement like the senior canine CBD treats, it really helps maintain that homeostasis and the gut movement that helps digest food, move it along the tract properly, and then absorb the nutrients as well.
So I think this is a great time to talk about one of the other 8 major classes of conditions that CBD can really help to treat, that Pet Med Labs has been able to identify. And we're talking about it right now. It's the digestive system, and it's also nausea. Okay, so my dog is definitely guilty of being a nervous vomiter.
Yes.
I like to say that she is the good compass of which man I should date, because she always used to throw up at one boyfriend's house and not the next one, so I'd always know which guy was a better choice. But if you're not like me and you don't read into your pet that much, no one likes a pet that has nausea problems, right? And no one wants their pet to be uncomfortable. But nausea seems to be common in a lot of dogs, and we just kind of let it happen. I mean, why does a pet get nauseous? What's happening there?
Yeah, absolutely. And even the process of nausea is this really interesting, for me it's interesting, complicated process that has to do with the connection between the brain and the stomach. And then at some point, the brain and the other system decide that it wants to expel the contents of the stomach for many different reasons. And it could be anything from just simply eating something that upset the stomach to something that's, much more terminal, much more underlying, like organ dysfunction. But one of the more common symptoms, as we were saying, is actually hypersalivation. So if a pet is hypersalivating, for dogs and cats specifically, that means that they are nauseous. So one of the ways that we can, again, treat that is with some type of CBD products.
I've always heard that if a pet is eating grass excessively, or trying to eat a lot of grass, like kind of grazing a little bit, that could be a sign of nausea. Is that true, or is that just kind of a red
If you
herring?
ask anyone that has a cat or dog, they would say it's absolutely true. And even for my pets, it's true. But whether or not it's a cause and effect or it's a correlation, we have tried to do studies on this, and no one can really identify specifically why. Are we hitting back down into the limbic system, into the reptilian part of the brain that we all have, that is just wanting to stick with something that's strictly fiber so that it can move the gut contents through the digestive tract sooner? We don't fully understand that, but we do know that it's a correlation.
Right, so whether the dog is already knowing that it's sick and it wants to be able to move something, and that's why a dog will, because I know I've had dogs that have been eating, they'll eat grass and I'll think, oh, they don't feel well. And it's kind of like when I see that, I know that that's a sign that they're feeling a little sick. So if you have a dog that, does eat grass or does have strange dietary patterns, these treats would be an excellent choice for you, any age, whether it's the senior treats or just the, tried and true, Pet Med Labs CBD canine treats. That could be a great indicator if you see a dog.
Set up the Pet Med
Okay.
Lab CBD.
Yep.
Take a break, let's take a breath, and talk about the Pet Med Labs CBD treat and the digestive system.
So anyone that has a dog that may be having strange dietary patterns, whether it's nausea or not eating as often as he or she should, that's a really great indicator, even if you just see them eating grass now and then, that you could really help out that nausea or that dietary issue with a Pet Med Labs CBD treat. Whether it's the senior treats or the tried and true treats, those are great options for digestive and nausea issues.
Right, and it may be an indication of something that's underlying that needs to be looked into for sure. But to have something that you can give your pet when you know they're not comfortable and when you know they're not feeling well, it's a fantastic opportunity just to simply grab one of those treats and give it to them and have them feel better.
And other than the process of when a pet just chooses to eat, because I know that we've talked about, we have these appetite flakes, right? And appetite flakes, which I just like that phrase, but appetite flakes, that's helping a pet to eat. Is that correct?
It wants to stimulate them to eat.
Right. And that's without the CBD. So we already know that that's an excellent way to get a dog to want to eat if you're having appetite issues, is the Pet Med Labs appetite flakes. But as we're talking about CBD and its effects, other than the nausea, is there any part of your actual diet, or not ours, but is there any part of your dog's actual digestive tract that's being improved with these treats, with these Pet Med Labs treats? Maybe even the process of being able to pass their food better. Does that help at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that the ECS, the endocrine, and we know that the
What is the ECS?
I know.
Endocannabinoid?
I literally.
Okay, no, you're good. You're good.
We already know that the endocannabinoids.
Sorry,
There you
yeah,
go.
so we were going in for a quick, okay, let's do a quick touch up, take a deep breath.
I think we'll do this, and then I'll talk about the anxiety, stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's when I feel that I'm saying the same thing.
Oh, no. See, we're
Okay.
already a quarter through.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
And joints and mobility is so, and pain and inflammation
easy.
so low, skin and allergies so low. This one's longer. We'll save that for later. Okay, so we did. So I'm gonna digestive and nausea, preventing remedies.
Age and wellness,
Yeah.
digestive,
I think we're pretty good on nausea. I'm gonna move into stress and anxiety.
even the stress and anxiety.
Okay, so our big things on this: anxiety, primary. I love your quote from Temple Grandin that anxiety is worse than pain.
Isn't that great?
We definitely have to use that here. Yeah. Causes of anxiety and fear. See, now this is shit I actually get.
Right? Isn't that
Anxiety.
good?
This is my
But
tried
even
and
talking
true.
about the difference between fear and anxiety
Right.
is a good thing that I can speak
Right.
on that.
Right. Right. Because yeah, I love that too. Okay.
All right?
So really,
And again, integrating, the pet med labs.
Senior canine CBD treat.
okay, cool. And then from anxiety, I think it'd be a nice, easy leeway into skin and allergies in case that happens naturally. Because
Oh, yeah.
I thought my dog had an allergy and it was anxiety. You know what I mean? So because she was
Right.
biting.
Right. Oh.
Right. So I think those are good. That would be easy to tie into. Okay. Let me make sure we got some good notes. I'll make sure. All right. Now we were saying the ECS, endocannabinoid system.
Oh,
What
I
was
need
the
to go
last
into
point
that.
we left off on? Because I know it was ECS, but it was coming from.
Oh, how it affects the GI system.
Yes, yes.
You want me to just talk?
Sure. Yeah.
I can just talk, right? Okay. So we know that the ECS, the endocannabinoid system, is within all parts of the body and certainly including the gut system. So with the receptors that are located in that digestive system, supplementing with some type of senior,
Nailing it. Okay, let's make it shorter. Okay.
no, I'll go.
Okay,
I can
okay.
do this. So
We're
we
the
know,
same person.
I know. So we know that the endocannabinoid system, the ECS.
Let's get a quick start on that. That was
Okay. Wait, are you?
I'm going to ask the question just to make
Okay.
it, yeah. How do Pet Med Lab's CBD treats affect not just the nausea, but also the other parts of your gastrointestinal system? What's happening within their body as CBD is taking effect?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that the ECS, or the endocannabinoid system, is within all systems of the body, including the gut system. So there are receptors within the gastrointestinal tract that when supplemented properly, actually supports the digestive process that a pet is normally going through. So it helps support gut transit, which means that the body is digesting food and moving that food along and absorbing that food properly within the body.
Gut transit, I like that phrase. I'm going to use that more often. Okay, so we have a very understanding, at least I feel like I have a very good understanding of how these treats, these Pet Med Lab treats, especially with the CBD being at such a high concentration of that's the purest grade there is, can affect the dog's body in a way that will not just help with the aging and wellness like we mentioned, but also give little tiny boosts. Like we would have maybe a yogurt in the morning or, take our probiotic every day. If you give something like this to a dog just to help with its GI tract, you're really just kind of giving a little bit of almost like a multivitamin, if you will, but without it being a vitamin, because you're activating those systems within the dog.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. I actually, as a veterinarian, I look at CBD. As a veterinarian, I actually look at CBD treatment more as a hormone therapy rather than even a vitamin, because it does affect a very specific system within the body. And we tend to think that vitamins are just something that we can take or not take, which is true with the CBD treatments as well. But when we have something that's so specific and so powerful and so very pure in its source and then the way that we're providing it to the pet, it works in a more powerful way than we tend to think just vitamins may work.
Right, and that's actually really important that you said that, because I think sometimes when people think of vitamins, they think, well, vitamins aren't always absorbed, or vitamins have to be taken at a certain time of day with certain foods or this or that, and we're talking about something that works even more reliably than than a vitamin would as you think of it. So some people may say, All right, we have nausea that we've talked about, and these treats, these Pet Med Lab treats may help with my dog's nausea, but what if my dog's nausea is caused by anxiety and it has nothing to do with the gastrointestinal system necessarily? Can anxiety exhibit itself through nausea? I mean, that's always what I assumed was happening with my dog.
Yeah, absolutely. But look at a pet that you put into a car, right? And then a few minutes later, he may be vomiting. So that could be a partly emotion, but it could also be partly anxiety as well. Absolutely.
Right. See, I used to say it was whatever boyfriend I was with, that's why. But I think that when you see a dog exhibiting certain behaviors, that someone may say, oh, that's anxiety. That's sometimes hard as a pet parent to think that you're putting your dog in a situation that may cause them anxiety, but it's a lot more common than we think. Is that right? Pet anxiety?
It really is. Pet anxiety it is very common, and it shows up in very small, tiny ways. And pet parents obviously worry about that. I worry about that with my human and non-human kids all the time. You know, are we doing the right thing? Are we causing them to be stressed? But it's also important to understand the difference between fear and anxiety. So fear would be stepping on a snake, right? And you feel fear, but anxiety is the thought of stepping on the snake.
Oh, and we may have dogs that have that thought of stepping on the snake in a way that may not even actually be rational.
Right.
And okay.
Yeah, we don't have to go into that.
Well, we're gonna say separation anxiety is a big one, I think.
What are causes for stress and anxiety?
Okay, but I really like that explanation.
Do that, and then
Yeah, that was helpful to me.
get that, nail that down, and then go to how the Pet Med Lab treats are able to help with the anxiety.
Okay.
Okay, so causes of or signs of it. Signs of anxiety, you're saying?
Signs of anxiety.
Okay.
Signs of anxiety, what those are, and things that set dogs off, like you mentioned, thunderstorms earlier,
Right.
things that occur in dogs.
Signs of anxiety, causes of anxiety, ways that anxiety can be helped with the Pet Med Labs.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
What are some signs of anxiety in dogs?
You know, the general term that I could offer any pet parent would be anything that appears to be nervousness. It could be anything from shaking or trembling, even not wanting to get into a car, or even sometimes it can look like fear. You know, there's fear aggression that can come out as well that can be potentiated from anxiety.
And my dog actually was biting its paws when I thought that it was an allergy and it was anxiety. So sometimes people think there could be a digestive issue, a coat issue, an allergy issue, and it could all be related back to anxiety. So it can manifest in lots of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you said, chewing on their paws, and even larger dogs tend to have what's called an acrolick granuloma. So they could chew or lick, you know, one of the spots on their legs. Now that can also point out some underlying pain issues like arthritis or something else more chronic that's coming up. But first we always think about the mental issues and then try to treat that.
So what could be causing these mental issues? What could be causing these anxieties with dogs? What are some of these triggers?
You know, it's very breed specific, and we all know that a Chihuahua is going to react differently to something that maybe a Great Dane would be. So it is very individual, and it, you know, I've even seen cases in behavioral situations where it was a black hat that was on a human, and any human that was wearing a black hat would cause this particular dog to be very, very fearful. So there's a lot of little triggers that we don't know, but one of the more important things for us to understand is that they exist, that it looks like nervousness, and it could even look like a physical reaction, like biting or chewing on their feet.
I have a big one that I want to mention that I've seen in a lot of pets, and a lot of pet parents, they say, I don't know, I'm doing my best. And then we like to point fingers and say, well, there's a way you can solve it, but it's not so easy. And it's called separation anxiety.
Yes.
Now, I have it in reverse. I get anxiety from separating from my dog. But I've heard it's mostly the other way around.
Right.
And that's pretty common. I mean, if you leave your home and your dog can suddenly be anxious, and you may not even be there to be there for your anxious dog. Is that pretty common?
Yeah, it is very common, and I actually hate to say that there are certain cases that we have to see throughout the years, even for euthanasia, and that families will have no other choice other than go through the euthanasia process, even because of something as terrifying for a pet as separation anxiety.
I've seen pets that have clawed through doors or they've broken windows to get out, and that's just, you know, the home damage. So would something like a Pet Med Lab CBD treat be good for anxiety and stress, even if it was a separation anxiety? Is that one of the ways we could, utilize these treats?
Yeah, absolutely. So regardless of the underlying, reasoning behind any of it, the fact that we can use Pet Med Labs, the fact that we can use Pet Med Labs treats in order to treat these situations, it opens the door to so many other options besides just these very, very heavy pharmaceutical options that we have available to us right now.
And I know that we have 8 different topics to talk about, and I'm sure we want to move along. I just cannot stress enough how much stress and anxiety can be exhibited in pets in ways that are affecting our everyday life that sometimes we won't even acknowledge. Are your neighbors getting upset because your dog is barking? Do you feel guilty putting some kind of, collar on your dog, even if they have the scent collars that dogs don't like? A lot of these can come from anxiety, and that's one of CBD's most known, tried and true reliefs is from anxiety and stress in humans and animals alike. So it really is a very important key point, I think, in these treats in particular.
You're exactly right.
Yes. So we mentioned that sometimes dogs can exhibit certain traits when they're stressed or anxious, right? And one of them you mentioned, you said a very long phrase. I know it as hot spots. But you said something different. What you said?
Right, acral lick granuloma.
Okay.
And larger dogs tend to have this a little bit more frequently than the smaller dogs. But what it looks like is it looks like a large dog laying down like this, and they're just licking. It's usually right below the elbow where they're just licking. And it turns into what is a sore, in essence.
So this is bringing me to what our next category I would like to talk about is, which is skin and allergies.
Yeah.
Because I think when we talk about diet, and the nausea of a dog and even the stress of a dog, a lot of times it will exhibit itself on the skin of a dog. When you have an animal, what comes into one of your offices and they'll have a problem with their skin, you may think, is it an allergy? Are they licking it? I mean, it's hard to discern, yeah?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. And I'm from Florida, so dermatology is one of the practice builders, we like to joke, but it's also very, very frustrating for us as doctors to treat because the skin is the largest organ that we have. So there's so many different things that can affect it, whether it's external, something like someone changing their laundry detergent could affect their dog. Or if it's environmental, the dog walking through a lawn that has just been treated, or even something internal, like the type of food that they're taking, which is why Pet Med Labs very pure, pure source of protein has been such an important part of actually getting the right medicine, the right delivery of this to the pets.
We may be even exposing our dogs to allergies that we would never think are allergens to our dogs. And of course within our food, but even in just everyday life, you may think, okay, well now I'm feeding my dog with the Pet Med Labs, fantastic, pure beef treats, but that's fine. I've taken care of a diet. But you may still want to be aware that there could be other things within the environment of the dog that makes that CBD administration all the more important. My dog has an allergy to down feathers. Very silly thing that you wouldn't know unless you had done an allergy test, and most people wouldn't do an allergy test. But when you know that a dog could be on a couch and be exposed to an allergen, or on a carpet and be exposed to an allergen, it makes the skin and the overall health of the skin all the more important to pay attention to. And that's why that CBD is so important, even if you're using the spray or the pill pouches. Is that the pill pockets?
The pill pouches.
The pill pouches, okay.
Yeah, the pill pouches are such an easy and direct way to give them medication.
Right, because the skin of a dog, I think, is just so, it's not going to tell you what's bothering it.
Right, no, and it's very difficult to diagnose. So finding what allergen is actually the reason for the inflammation, it's very difficult. So if you, again, look at the back of a dog food or the back of other treats, you'll see so many ingredients. But to really find which one is causing the problems, you would have to take all of them out, introduce each one at a separate time, and then figure out which one was causing the inflammation. But to have a pure product to begin with, that's how we maintain that level of reduced reactivity.
We're talking a little bit about things that are very hard to diagnose, things that are very hard to see. They're kind of not clear to the naked eye at all, especially when it's another breed of being. I mean, it's not a breed, I guess it'd be another whole species.
Right.
But one thing that is very difficult to see is also what's happening within a dog's mind. And one of the scariest things for a pet owner can be seizures and epilepsy.
Right.
And this is something where, if you've ever seen this happen, I'm sure you have, it's very frightening for a
Right.
pet owner.
Yeah, it is. And, it's one of the things that we talk to pet parents about when they do have any type of canine dysfunction or even brain tumors, something that we see a lot within hospice care. And I always tell them, I explain the fact that seizures are not painful for the pet. We know this even in human medicine. The seizure is not painful for the being going through it, but who's the seizure painful for?
The person watching.
The person watching. That's the most important part of this. So if we can mitigate, the seizures, if we can bring that level down a little bit, if we can calm the mind enough to not short out, which is essentially what a seizure can be, it really makes the entire quality of life for both the pet and the pet parent so much better.
So then we cannot stress enough how important the CBD factor of the Pet Med Labs treats is when we're talking about seizures and epilepsy. This is something that humans are administering who are epileptic. This is one of the most common treatments for epilepsy, even in humans, and the fact that most people won't use it on their dog yet. They don't know about it. They haven't heard about it. It's kind of heartbreaking because it is so effective. Is that because of the receptor, the CB1 receptor, that's so good at focusing right on your brain and your nervous system? Do you think that's one of the effects of why it works so well with dogs with epilepsy?
It is. It's the one thing that we know right now, but there's so many studies that need to be done for us to fully comprehend. But the one thing that we do know is that many times the only other option that we have is a barbiturate. That's the only other option we have to treat seizures or epilepsy. So to have something that is so much more gentle on the entire system and not something that we have to continue to have the pet parents come back to the clinic to actually run blood tests for. So when you're on barbiturates, those pets have to come back to the clinic to make sure that we have the right levels at the right time and that we're actually decreasing the seizure activity and that the rest of the organs are functioning properly.
So you're saying if you have a dog that suffers from seizures or epilepsy or both, that not only are you going in more often to the vet and spending more money and more time and putting your dog through a stressful situation because you have to keep getting tests to
Right.
get the medication that's a barbiturate that may not even be as effective at treating the epilepsy as the CBD in these Pet Med Labs treats.
Yes, and making sure that the body is healthy enough to continue that treatment. When
Right.
if we have a healthy treatment to begin with, then we don't have those negative effects. And then as a medical professional, we're not worried about the pet continuing with that treatment.
I love what you said about seizures being hard on the person that's watching them. And I think that that's a little bit of what we're talking about today on a wider scale is how hard it is to watch an animal in any regard suffering. And we never want that. And I think one of the biggest questions that we often ask ourselves as pet parents is, well, how much do we treat? What can we treat? And with cancer and tumors, which is so common in animals all across the spectrum, that question is prevalent.
Yep.
How much can we treat? What do we treat? When do we treat? So how is cancer treated or even affected? I know that CBD is very closely related to cancer and treatments in cancer even in humans. So how is that affected by CBD?
Yeah, and one of the more important things, just when we talk about this broad word called cancer,
Yes.
is to remember that CBD actually has proven to slow the growth of certain types of cancer cells. So it is a very good, it's a very good starting place for us. And again, with no downside, it's kind of a no-brainer when adding in that type of treatment. But this word cancer is just this broad word that means that cells are dividing abnormally. That's all that means. And in dogs particularly, we have a couple types of cancers that happen very frequently. Osteosarcoma, which means that the bone cells, the osteoblasts, are reproducing too rapidly. And then, of course, hemangiosarcoma, and that happens within the blood vessels within the pet. So, there are different types of these cancers, but CBD has been shown to reduce the growth rate of those cells, and that's why it's so important and such an easy treatment for us to give. And sometimes it's a better alternative or simply a bridge between when the family has received that diagnosis and if and when they decide to do chemo, which can come with a whole different other symptoms and other disease progressions.
It is very difficult. You mentioned chemo because in humans that may be more common, but the cost, even with pet insurance,
Right.
is pretty astronomical of treating cancer in dogs with that. And we have people that are choosing to treat their cancer with CBD, and not to say that it's a cure by any means or that anything is proven to definitively say one thing as we're all still learning, but boy, is the science really behind, as you said, the slowing of growth, the slowing of this tumor growth. And that's a way you can actually approach this difficult subject of how do you treat, when do you treat cancer in a dog? It's very difficult.
Yeah, and the reason why I love it so much is the fact that there is no downside. So whether or not it's going to slow the growth of the cancer depends on the cancer, depends on how rapidly it's dividing in the first place. But it is a option that may be less costly, less emotionally costly even for the family. And so chemo is available for pets, and it's not the same as for humans, so it is a good option. But sometimes family can't, again, emotionally afford it, financially afford it, and you know it's something that can bridge that gap again and help that pet be more comfortable longer with their family.
Okay, and Natasha, as you talk about pet med labs,
Yeah, you're doing a good job.
And we're nailing it. Yeah. Done.
Say you've never done this before. I am so impressed.
where are we at on the list, Natasha? You think you
We have two more after this. We got to do joints and mobility. The two we have left are the